Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, the Bushcraft Padawan. One of the first pieces of kit that I bought purposefully after getting interested in this whole field of bushcraft was a ferro rod, a Ferrocerium rod, because, well, all the cool guys had them, right? Everybody that I was kind of looking up to on YouTube and their blogs and things, they all had a ferro rod. And I don't think it was an impulse buy, because, you know, years later I'm still using a ferro rod, not the ferro rod that I bought back then. And that's the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to encourage you to have a think about the kit that you've got. I'm a big believer in the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm a huge believer in that, which is why a lot of the kit that I've got today, I've had decades from when I was in the army. However, I'm also a big believer in experimenting. I'm a big believer in nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'm a big believer in trying things out and modifying things and tweaking things until you can turn something that is okay to good, and from good to great, and from great to excellent. So I want to encourage you to have a look at your equipment and just figure out, is there anything that you can do or change or modify to enhance the way that it performs for you. My particular example in this video is the humble ferro rod. So this is one of my earlier ferro rods. I genuinely can't remember if this was the first one that I bought, but here is a ferro rod. This is now my son's ferro rod. It just kind of didn't, it just sort of didn't work for me. It worked, as in it threw sparks, don't get me wrong, but the fact that I was able to detach the handle from the rod, yes, I could super glue it back in place. I've done that already and it still came apart. So it was quite small, it did its job at the time, but I moved on from using that, and I can't genuinely remember why, but I moved on from using that and gave that to my son. I then moved towards a Light My Fire, which is a very, very popular brand of ferro rod. Can't remember why I moved away from using that, although if you look, you'll notice that there is a relationship between the dip in the thumb point here that you hold it and the way that it has degraded in terms of the way that I've used my striker or the back of my knife on it. I'm going to talk about that more in a future video, and slightly less depth later in this video here. I then moved on to this beast here. This is a hefty bit of kit. You know, there's my hand, there's a ferro rod next to it. It ain't far off the size of my hand, to be perfectly honest. It weighs something, okay? You take a knock to the head with this and it's going to do you some damage. I'm not advocating that, folks. There's no moving parts on it if you look. It's just a single drilled hole through which I've attached some cord with a loop at the end for me to attach to my belt. The slight problem with this though is this is going to last forever. This is going to outlast me. It throws great sparks, but it's bloody heavy. And I don't know about you, but I carry my ferro rod round in my pocket, my right pocket, with a loop attached to my belt so that I don't misplace it, or if I don't put it in the pocket correctly, it's just going to dangle there at the end of the cordage and not drop onto the floor. And one of the downsides of having such a beast of a piece of ferro rod is one, it's heavy. When you add that to all of the other gubbins that we carry around in our pockets bushcrafting, I was forever pulling my trousers up. I haven't got much of a hip and a backside as it is. There's nothing to hold my trousers up, so I didn't need extra weight in it. But the primary thing is this. It has worn multiple holes in my very expensive but otherwise very robust Vida Pro Fjallraven trousers. Just have a look at some of the holes in my right pocket. I've given up repairing them, to be perfectly honest. The trousers are on the way out generally, they're several years old, but I've given up repairing them because with this ferro rod it just kept poking holes in it. I don't carry my car keys in that pocket, they always go in my day sack when I'm out and about. There was nothing else in that pocket of any weight or substance that would have caused those holes apart from this ferro rod. The other downside to it is If you attach a huge piece of cordage to this, then you've got a lot of gubbins floating around in your pocket. If you attach a short piece, you can kind of sometimes be constrained depending on how and where you're using your ferro rod. So I was looking for something that would solve that problem, would allow me to detach it easily from the loop and reattach it from the cordage, but also didn't weigh the size, didn't weigh the equivalent of a tree trunk and wear holes in my pocket. And that brings us up to today. This is what I'm using at the moment. This is my ferro rod of choice at the moment. I bought this from Jamie Dakota at Hull Bushcraft. It's a fairly short, sharp, stubby piece of kit. Wooden handle on there. It actually comes with a clear finish or a varnished finish, but I asked Jamie to send me an unfinished piece and I wanted to paint it orange just to help me locate it should the worst come to the worst. It's got a piece of short, very short cordage attached to it there. Look at that, very short indeed. You could say it's almost too short. It's worth noting that this cordage, the inside of it is actually a tinder in itself. I think it's called fire cord or something like that. I'm sure if Jamie's watching this video, he'll correct me in the comments below. But here's the quite cool thing. Very, very short. Quite difficult, I imagine, to be able to bring that to bear fully if it's attached to your belt, which mine is. But look at this. Let me bring this close to camera. You see that metal attachment running into the end of the wooden handle? If I depress the plunger in that, it actually comes apart and then clicks back into place. That's really handy. That means I can carry a very short piece of cordage in my pocket, but still know that if I need to move the ferro rod away from my body to use it in some way, I can do that and then I can firmly reattach it. So this is what I'm using at the moment. You'll also notice if I rotate that handle round, there's no specific place to grip this, which means that it's much easier, and I'm going to talk about this in a future video, it's much easier to work in time around your ferro rod, as you can see I've started to do now. It's much easier to work around it 360 degrees when you're striking against something, meaning that you're going to mitigate that dip that you saw in my previous ferro rod. If I hold it up, you'll mitigate against that dip that you can see in the ferro rod there. That makes it very, very difficult to use. You can work around that because you can work around the ferro rod. The only questions I've got in my head at the moment about this, and I've not had it long enough to answer them, so they're not negatives, they're just questions. How easy is this mechanism going to be if I'm wearing gloves or mittens? I wouldn't say it's fiddly, but I would say you need a certain amount of manual dexterity and control to be able to release that and replace that safely. So that's one question. And the other question, and again I've not had it long enough, so it's not a poke at this, is I'm just wondering if any dirt or grit or anything gets in there, is there a risk of this locking mechanism failing, and despite you thinking that you've attached it securely, in actual fact some grit is in the mechanism and it falls away? I genuinely don't know, Jamie. It's not a dig at all at the product. I like it. I'm enjoying using it. They're just questions that I've got in my head that in the fullness of time, hopefully I'll be able to answer for myself. So just a reminder why I've taken you on this trip down memory lane relating to my ferro rods. It's because I started off with something that worked. It did its job. But as my thinking and my practical application of it evolved, I realised that it wasn't for me, and I've gone through a process and may still be in a process of finally landing upon that perfect ferro rod, if indeed there is such a thing. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. I do not want to encourage you to go out spending money on stuff. It's Black Friday today, quite ironically, when I'm recording this, and of course lots of people will be going out spending money on stuff. I don't want to encourage that. I just want you to encourage some reflection, some critical analysis, some self-reflection on the kit that you use and whether there's anything that you can do to enhance the way that you're using it. Maybe it is a new piece of kit, maybe it's just actually tweaking something slightly so that it can bring about greater benefits to you and enhance your time outdoors even more so. Thank you for watching my ramblings. I've talked about the fact that I'm referring to a future video on ferro rods, which I've got planned up here. Shouldn't be too long in the making, that particular video. But thank you for watching this video. I've got a question for you all now in the comments down below, either on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or Reddit, wherever you're watching it. What have you modified recently, or what have you upgraded to recently, and why? Yes, we can all tweak stuff and buy stuff, but why have you tweaked something recently? Why did you replace or upgrade something recently? I think the why is the more important than the fact that you have. Do please let me know in the comments below. If you're a subscriber, mwah, thank you very much. If you're not, shame on you. Click the button in this corner of the screen. It's been there for the whole video. If you want to see more from me, then please do feel free to click on that subscribe button. Thank you as always for watching. Enjoy your time in the woods. See you in the next video. Cheers.